Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Cake Diaries. Today's episode is about a business plan and managing your orders. This is something that was requested on my Instagram in a recent poll, so that is why we're going over it today. There will be lots of upcoming ones that were requested, so if you just keep an eye out for those, and make sure if you're watching on YouTube to hit the bell and subscribe, and if you're listening on Spotify, then make sure to follow the podcast. So, we are going to be getting into, it's basically a template that I've made up. Obviously I've taken inspiration from various business plans. I made one very similar when I started this business. I do not have it now. I've set myself goals, but I don't have my original plan. So I've remade it basically, and I've written out the fundamentals that I think are really important for when you're making a business plan and when you're starting your business, things to think about. So if you get a pen and paper and a drink, because I've got my coffee, then you will be able to write out this business plan, and hopefully it will help you start to plan your business and also just expand on your ideas and figure out whether it is something that you can monetize off of and whether it's worth putting the time and money into. So I've got my fluffy notepad here, which if you're listening on Spotify you won't be able to see, but it is the cutest thing ever. So I've got all my notes here, so we're going to be working through this and hopefully it will be really helpful for those of you that are starting a business. So we will be talking about managing orders. I have got a section on that, a separate section, which we'll get into about halfway through the video, and the podcast, which will explain managing workload, that kind of thing, because again that was requested and it does actually integrate into your business plan. So we are going to get started. If you haven't already, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you've hit that subscribe, like and the notification bell, and if you're listening on Spotify then go and follow the podcast. So the first thing is the idea. The idea can be something that has come to you quickly, it can be something that you've thought about for a while, it can be something that you didn't expect at all. It can come at any time. Mine came really randomly. I didn't expect to be doing this. I wasn't exactly an avid baker as a child, and most people were quite shocked when they hear that. I would bake for the odd charity, but and that was for work, and that was maybe like once every 6 months. It wasn't very often at all, and I wasn't very good, if I was honest, but I think it's surprising what you can learn in a short space of time. I'm quite a quick learner, but yeah, it doesn't necessarily need to be something that you are crazy passionate about throughout your life to be passionate about it at the point that it becomes the idea that you want to make into a business. I'm obviously very passionate about what I do, but it wasn't something that I've been brought up with. So what I'm saying is it can be something that is a long-term idea. It can also be something that comes completely randomly, and you don't expect it. So that idea, you want to make sure it's achievable in terms of transforming it into a business, because it's all well and good having all these crazy ideas. I mean, I have plenty, but actually putting them into practice is the hardest part. It comes down to funding, time, the actual effort to think about things, because there's a lot of planning that goes involved, there's a lot of like logistics that you have to work out, and I mean funding is usually one of the biggest ones. That's why people fundraise when they start businesses, but yeah, you want to check whether you can actually monetize off of it, because that is the most important thing. Obviously if you're starting a business you want it to make money, and if it's not going to make a good amount of money and you're going to lose money, then what's the point? Like, obviously I think it's a very character building experience to run your own business and be your own boss, but I think you want to be able to monetize and you want to be able to capitalize off of what you're doing. So that's the first thing. You need to have that idea, you need to have that driving force that pushes you to make it into a business or potentially a company or whatever it might be, but you also need to set yourself reasonable expectations. It's very good to be ambitious. I'm very ambitious. I have very high goals for myself, some which I don't know whether I will ever achieve, but at the same time I know that when I said, right, I want to be a baker, I knew that that was something that I could do. Whereas if I said something completely ludicrous that was a very out there idea, it might take a lot more hard work. I might still do it, but it might be a lot more difficult. So you need to work out whether you're willing to put the time and effort into doing those things that are really difficult, or whether you want to go with a simple idea that can be completely expanded into something even bigger. I like to consider myself a brand rather than just a business. So I think a lot of people would just assume that a baking business is just a business, but you can expand. So there can be simple ideas, there can be very complex ones. It just depends on what your aim is. So that's the first thing. The next thing follows on from that, and that is your sample product. This is a general term, but it basically means you need to be able to monetize that idea. It's all well and good having ideas. There's plenty of people in the world that have crazy ideas, but it never transforms into anything. And that is because anyone can have an idea, like literally anyone. I could ask someone down the street and they say, you know what, I want to start a business in this, but they never do it. I could come up with 1,000 ideas, but plenty of them haven't actually been put into play. And that is because it's either too hard, don't have the funding, or it's just not something I'd ever be passionate about or want to spend my time on. So you need to work out whether you can monetize it, because transforming that idea into a business, company, service, product, all of those things, that is what needs to happen. And if you can't monetize it, then it's not going to necessarily go anywhere. It will just remain a hobby. So that's the first thing. You want to make sure that you can monetize off it, transfer it into more than just an idea, put it into practice, expand on those ideas, and actually come up with a business plan like we're doing, rather than just saying, right, I want to start this and that's it. You need to work out the logistics of that business, which is what we're doing right now. So hopefully this is helpful. The next thing, which goes into sample product, is finding a gap in the market, because a lot of the time an idea needs to be unique. Because, I mean, mine wasn't particularly unique. There was plenty of home bakers, but I feel like my way of advertising and my way of promoting my business was very different to most. The fact that I have a YouTube channel, the fact that I am very customer facing, I feel like, because there is a face behind me rather than just being a business owner that is hidden behind this business. Everyone feels like they know me because I have this channel and because you see a lot of me, whereas obviously other businesses don't have that. So I think it depends on how you market yourself. You can take an idea that is popular or similar and still find that gap in the market, but finding a gap in the market and monetizing off something can also be having a completely unique idea and business plan that is not thought of, and it's something new that people are going to go, oh, that's new, I haven't seen that before, I want to invest in that, I want to buy that, or however it works. So those are the two main things: have an idea, be able to monetize it, and be unique. Those are my three main things to start with. Now we're going to move on to the logistics that you have to think about on how it actually runs and the funding behind it. So the first thing is your team. So this goes into the managing orders, so we will go on to that in a minute. So the first thing, like I said, is workload management. This is your orders, your services, or your products, like the production of your products. You need to work out whether you can manage that, what kind of team you need in order to expand, because like my business, I know that if I want to expand, I get employees, but I can just take on more orders. So if you're creating a product, say, you would obviously have to have someone to create that product, so you'd need to have those employees, whereas I create my service. So you need to work out that side of things, whether you require a team, how many, because that's costs that come into your business, and also whether in the future, in order to expand your business, you'll need to take on a team, because in order to manage those orders and put in enough time, because you know you can only work so many hours a week, you will need to work out how many people you'll need, like it doesn't have to actually be a number. It's more so that, like, say you need a production team, you can just have that, and then you know that you can't do that yourself, so you're going to have to outsource that. So that is part of your plan. It's like, I'm going to need these kind of people to run this business. So you need to work that out, because some businesses are more complicated than others. Obviously, baking businesses, it's usually a one-man band, and then it expands to maybe a shop front, which you then employ people. Whereas obviously, you know, these very big corporations that build from something smaller, they need a lot more people because it is a whole corporation. So it just depends on what you're going for. You need to decide whether you're a solo worker or whether you are requiring a team. And also, like I say, in order to expand your business, whether you'll require more people. I can expand my business without necessarily employing more people, because I have many different avenues of income. So it just depends on what your avenues of income are and how much time they take up. And like I say, when I say capitalising, it's capitalising off the things that are the most profitable. So we'll get onto that again in a little while when we go on to finances. But we're going to go on to managing orders. So this is leading on from your team, because obviously the way that you manage your orders is basically how many hours you're going to have to do, which if it's too much, then you'll have to employ people. So this is where we're leading on to managing your orders. This was mentioned quite a few times, so I'm assuming people want to know how they manage them when they expand, and also whether you employ more people, etc. So for me personally, this is my plan in regards to a cake business, or like a sweet treats business basically. So the first thing is, for managing my orders, is to have a plan for the week. So I do a cake plan. I don't do plans for smaller orders, but obviously if you are a person that doesn't do cakes, then you would need a plan for those things. But I do it for my big orders. So that is a cake plan, and I have a plan of each day, and it's in order, and I've got all of the details for each order, and then I've got whether they've paid, all of this information, and it's all in chronological order, so that I can work through it, I can tick it off, and that's how I keep track of those cake orders, because they are very, very important, and they take the most time. You wouldn't want to forget one, whereas things like brownies and cupcakes, if it was not in an order log and you did not manage your orders very well, it wouldn't take you as long to make it. So the next thing is two things. I'm just looking over there because I actually have my order books over there, but we have a order log, and that is a detailed order book which has every detail about the order. This is only for cakes. And then I have my order diary, which is a very brief version of the order book, and basically it's got it on per day. So I have, say like this Friday, I'll have like Biscoff cake for Kate, and then I've got this cake for this person, and it just shows me that, right, I've got 2 cakes going out on that day, I've got 3 cakes going on that day. So then I can just look and I can go, right, I've already got 4 cakes, I can't take any more. Whereas otherwise I was finding that I was taking on so many cakes in a weekend, and it was getting quite a lot. So that way I've got it all in order, because the order book is based on who orders first in terms of the order. So it means if someone orders for December and then someone orders for tomorrow, then the December order is going to be in front of the one that's tomorrow. So it's not in order at all. And that's just because of the way it's laid out. Whereas because this is a diary, it's obviously in date order, so it works out a lot easier to read through. So definitely have a couple of order logs, varying information and detail, because I feel like you can't just have it all in one, because when you're doing certain things, you don't need that detail. So like if someone asks me if I'm free on the 17th, I don't need to know what type of cake that person's having. I just need to know how many I have on that day. So that's why I have the 2 separate. One's simplified, one is more detailed. Then you need to be able to know your limits. So if you don't know your limits, I'd recommend that when you next make a cake, I'd time yourself. So I usually say roughly about 3 hours to make a cake. That doesn't include washing up, because usually I have plenty of time when I'm making a cake, so it means that the washing up can be done in between. But I roughly say 3 hours, so that I know if I've got 3 that day, then it's going to be like a 9-hour day. So that's my rough guide for me. But obviously if you take longer, I used to take like 4 hours maybe, or like 4.5 sometimes to do cakes, because it used to take me a lot longer. It used to take me like an hour to ice a cake, whereas now it takes me about 10 minutes. So it really just depends on your skill, but I would definitely time yourself, because when you know how much time you take to do things, you can then manage your time and work out how many orders you can take on in that time, and then you're not taking on too much, and you're also not taking on too little. Like, you don't want to turn things down, then you realise, actually, I could have done that order. The next thing is to not take on too much, like I say, because you don't want to be stressed, because then it lowers the quality of your service usually, and it also just stresses you out unnecessarily. You're not being paid to just stress like crazy. I mean, most of the point of having your own business is so that you can make your own hours. So I just think that if you don't take on too much, then you're not going to be stressed, because like I say, I like doing my own business because it means that I make my own hours, I'm not too stressed, and it's a nice relaxing job for me. So yeah, just don't take on too much, and also don't take on things out of desperation. I think it depends on the situation, but if something is really last minute and I think, oh, you know what, I could do it, if I think that it's going to stress me out, I don't take it, because otherwise it's unnecessarily stressing me out. The next thing is plan ahead and make things in advance. I never used to do this. I'm one of those people that works well under pressure. So I prefer to have loads of orders. I prefer to leave things to the last minute. And I don't mean like, 5 minutes before it needs to go. But if I'm making like cake toppers, I'd rather make them like all the night before, and I can like smash all of them out. And like fondant toppers, anything like that, I usually leave it to the last minute, which I used to always do, but now I don't. Like, I make my cake plan and I do all of the fondant toppers, I do all of the cake toppers, I do them on like the Tuesday, and all these cakes are going out at the weekend. But I just get them done in advance, because then it saves the stress, and then all you have to think about is the cake. It's amazing. I don't know why I didn't do it sooner, but it is really nice because it's just relaxing, because you know that you don't have to think about anything else. Whereas I would have the odd time where I had so much on that I was like, oh my god, I need to make cake toppers, and I've got like, say it's the night before and stuff's going out in the morning, I'm like, I need to make all these cake toppers now, so I'm going to have to stay up late and make them. And it's like, if I'd done them in advance when I wasn't doing anything, then I would have saved myself all that stress. So definitely try and make things in advance if you can, because it just saves a whole lot of stress. The next thing is to utilise your time and multitask. So I am very good at this. My brain runs 1,000 miles an hour, so I do a lot of things at the same time. But I find that you want to be doing things back to back and kind of like switching roles throughout the day. So if I am baking multiple cakes, then what I'll be doing is like one's in the oven whilst I'm mixing the next batch of the other one, so that it comes out the oven, then the next batch goes in. I utilise my time like that, so I want to be back to back doing things. So I try and utilise it like that, back to back. If I'm not baking or not mixing something, then I'm washing up. If I'm not washing up, then I'm making buttercream ready for when the cakes come out the oven, and once they're cooled, then it's ready. It really just depends, but I like to multitask and do a lot of things at the same time, and then it means that in those, say, 2 hours that you've been baking and the cakes have been cooling, you've got a lot more done because you've made the buttercream in advance. So that's ready for when they come out the oven and once they're cooled. And then you've got no washing up to do because that's all done. You've wiped down all the sides. Like, I like the whole back and forth. Whereas some people might say, well, once they're in the oven, I'm going to sit down and relax. But for me, I'm just like, no, while they're in the oven, I'm making the next batch ready. But it also depends how much you have on. If you have less on, then you'll be able to sit down. Like, I have the odd time where I do that, but most of the time I try and do other things whilst other things are taking place, if that makes sense. So that is probably my top tip for managing orders, is multitasking and utilising your time, but also just knowing your limits, like knowing how much you can take on, because if you don't know how long stuff takes you to do, if you have no idea on how to manage your time and the amount of orders you can get done in a certain amount of time, then there's no way for you to know how many to take on, whether it's too little, too much. So you need to be aware of how long it takes you to do things. And like I say, if you're a beginner, then I would recommend taking on less, because it usually does take longer. Even if it doesn't actually take you longer to do, there's also the stress of it, because you are a beginner. Typically, you're going to stress about making it a lot more. In my first few months, I definitely stressed about making cakes. I would literally, the cake would be perfect as they ordered, and they would get the cake, they would say it's lovely, but I would wait at least like a day, because I was just like, okay, what if they taste it and they don't like it? Like, it might look great, but then they don't actually like it. And I was so critical of myself. And then only like this year have I actually kind of accepted that people tell me my cakes are amazing, and maybe they actually are. Because yeah, I'm very, very hard on myself. But I think when you're a beginner, you're gonna naturally be a bit stressed. So it's just better not to take on too much. So the next thing, after managing your orders and knowing how much you can take on, whether you need a team of people, whether you can do it solo, is your target market. This is so important. If you don't know who you're selling to, then how are you going to sell a product or a service? So it's very important to know what you're aiming for. Your price range will reflect this, because say you're trying to be affordable but you're very overpriced compared to your competitors, then obviously you're not going to come across as affordable, you're going to come across as expensive. So you have to be aware of who you're selling to in terms of your pricing, but you also need to charge your worth. And sometimes this can mean that you work your way up. I definitely did this. There were people in my area that were a lot cheaper than me. They still are. And they have remained the same price-wise, and I have increased. That's basically because my skill is, not to be rude, but it is better. I've definitely built my skill in a shorter space of time, whereas they might have been going for longer than me, but I wouldn't consider their skill to be on the same level. So that's why they charge less, and that's why I charge more. But you need to work out who you're selling to, the kind of class that you're selling to, because if you're trying to be affordable for your local town that you live in, but you're extremely overpriced, then you might find that you can't sell locally. But if you're trying to appeal to the more, wealthier class, then you might, and you're kind of giving a refined service, I guess, then obviously you might be able to price higher. But again, it depends on your skill. So know who you're selling to, because this goes for advertising. Like, say you want to sell to schools. Well, if you don't advertise to schools, then you're not going to sell to them, if that makes sense. It's a very bad example, but you kind of get what I mean. Like, you have to know who you're selling to, otherwise you're not going to be advertising to the right people. You're not going to know who to target, who to appeal to in terms of like the way your product looks, what your service is. It's a bit like you want to sell kids clothing, but your size range is for adults, if that makes sense. Like, you need to know who you're selling to. It's very, very important. The next thing is direct your products towards them. So like, if someone was selling a product and they wanted it to be a kid's product, they might say, right, it's colourful, it's got to be fun, it's got to be kid friendly, it's got to be safe, because those are all things that they would need to be sold to children. So like I say, for me, I like to go for the more kind of like classier, but also kind of like elegant. I mean, some of my designs are like loaded drip cakes, but I consider them to still be kind of like outrageous, because they are more extravagant than some people's cakes. So that's kind of my theme, and that's what I like to go for. And then I want people that like those kind of things to be buying them. I want people that, the reason my price range works, what I'm trying to say is hard. Trying to articulate this is difficult. But basically, my price range matches my cakes, because if you want a over-the-top cake, then you're not going to be expecting it for £30. Whereas if you're thinking, right, I want to wow everyone on my birthday, I want to have this really beautiful cake then you're thinking that you're probably going to spend more, which then matches my price range of being around £60. So I think you have to match based on what kind of theme you're in, what demographic, what style your work is. But also you don't want to be too cheap, because then you will appeal to that kind of target market. And it's a generalisation, but it's typically correct, and bakers will probably resonate that sometimes if you are too cheap, then you attract the wrong type of customers. And that isn't anything to do with the person themselves or like a stereotype. It's more the personality. So it could literally be anyone, but they might mess you around, or they might want to pay up front rather than in advance, because they're seeing it as like a last minute sale because of the price range or the way you're advertising, rather than you're a business and you need a deposit and all of these things. Because when I started, there were a lot of people that were cheaper than me, but I got some of that custom as well, where people would barter with me, and it's like, I'm a set price, I'm a business. It's like going into Tesco's and trying to get something cheaper. It's like, you don't barter with Tesco's, so why are you like haggling with me? And that's the thing, if you are on the cheaper side, sometimes you can attract that kind of custom. So you want to make sure that you're not out of desperation pricing lower. So make sure that you've designed your products to the type of target market that you want, and that you're pricing them accordingly. Aim your advertising towards them. Like I say, you want it to be appealing for that target market. So I like to think that my target market, most of the people that buy from me are like middle-aged or younger, and I like to think that because my cakes are extravagant, they appeal to especially people my age, because it is nice to have a beautiful cake for your birthday rather than necessarily like a store-bought one. So I kind of know who I'm appealing to, and also it's kind of changed now that I have the platform that I do, because obviously I also appeal to businesses rather than just individuals that are buying my cakes. I also appeal to businesses that want advice from me. So I have kind of like two target markets, which is kind of hard to manage, but yeah, they're for different things, so you just need to know who you're targeting. And the next thing is goals. I think it's very important to have an idea of where you want something to go. It doesn't have to be set in stone, it doesn't have to be achieved. If it isn't achieved, then that's not the end of the world. It's just a thing to look forward to or to aim towards, because say I have all these goals, if I don't have them, then I don't actually need to do anything. I don't need to progress, I don't need to expand, I don't need to develop in any way, because I have nothing to measure. The whole point of a goal is that you can measure it. The whole point of a business plan is that you can measure your business and the way that it's going and its success back against your business plan. So you want to have goals. I would ideally say the first year, and then maybe 5 years, and then, or like 3 to 5, and then just the future. And this is what I did for mine. It's actually changed quite a lot now, but I would definitely say the first year is achievable goals, but also they can be ambitious, but maybe not too ambitious, because obviously in a year that is quite a short amount of time. I mean, you do hear people that completely take off, but there's also a lot of work in that. So I would say the 3 to 5 is where my like big goals come into play, and that's where my bigger ambitions come in. And then future is more of like a where I would like to be, but I don't mind if I'm not there, because it's future. Like, anything could change. In 10 years I could be in a completely different place to where I am now. I mean, I probably will be, but my situation might be completely different, so I can't necessarily say what I will be doing. So those goals are more of like a kind of general, but where I would like to be. But I think the most important is the first year, because that's kind of like the make or break. In the first year you could start your business and end it in the same amount of time. So I think the first year is very, very important to have an idea of where you want it to go, especially in terms of growth, because I think as a business you grow a lot in the first year, and that's obviously where you get your customer base and you start to grow and get feelers for what your business is and what you want it to become. So I think it's good to know where you want it to go, and also so that you have an idea for your customers, because I think it's very easy to tell if someone is running something and they haven't got a plan. Whereas if you have a plan and everything is organised and it seems like there is a kind of like timeline for things, then I think your customers will be able to see that, and they'll also be able to see your growth. So I would say that it's very important to have some goals, but like I say, these can be general, they can be kind of like you want to be there but you don't have to be, because obviously anything can change. So the next things we've got in relation to the market that is currently out there. So there's target market, and then there is analysing the market. So the market is what's already there, and also how well you do in that space. So it's how successful it can be. So you want to know whether your idea will fit into the market, whether it is something that will make money, and whether it can be capitalised off of. And like I say, whether there is a gap in the market for that kind of business. And also you want to analyse whether it, once you actually start it, you want to be able to know whether it's actually going well. So you want to kind of have a plan on how you're going to measure that. So for me, it was like my growth in terms of social media, because all my orders are pretty much through social media. I obviously now have a website, but social media is a big part in it. So if you grow on there, then that's more people seeing your products and your services. So I measured it by that, because I'm constantly growing on there, and also YouTube, and also I measure it by how many orders I have a month, mainly cakes, because brownies and things can be so variable, but cakes is my main kind of factor. So I work out like, right, have I had 10 cakes this month, have I had 15, 20, and then work out whether it's going up or down, or whether it can be yo-yoing, sometimes it does, or whether it's just like a consistent going up. It really just depends. Then the next thing is to capitalise off of those good sellers. So things that are high profit and good sellers are definitely things to capitalise off of. So it's difficult to know, because there's some things that are good sellers. So say you sell 100 of them, but then there are some things that are good profit. But if you only sell one item that is good profit, then you don't want to try and capitalise off of that, because although it is high profit, it's not selling that much. Whereas you want something that is a kind of a mix of both, because there's things that are best sellers but they might make you not very much profit, which means that you're going to have to do a lot of it to make the same amount of money as that thing that makes a lot of profit. So you have to work it out and work out whether it is doable, which is the whole point of this plan. But like my main goal is to do a lot more cakes than anything else, and that is because they make the most profit, whereas smaller items typically make less. So I now know that, and that's why I kind of take on less smaller orders like cupcakes and brownies, because I know that the profit on those is less, and I'd rather utilise my time and do more cakes, and they're also more enjoyable for me. That's just a personal preference. So that again can come into it, whether it's something that you want to do a lot of, because in order to get that profit you're probably going to have to. So you want to work out your profit and sales, because like I say, if it's high in profit but it's not selling, then you need to maybe reevaluate that. The next thing is financials. So this is your costing, your bills, your pricing, all of that. So this is a little bit complicated, and I know some people really have difficulty pricing. So in regards to financials, you need to work out quite a few things, and they're all very important, because obviously money is typically what makes a business. If you don't have any, then it will affect your growth, and that's typically why people require funding, because a lot of expansion of businesses takes money, typically. So the first thing is to work out the cost of expanding. I definitely have a rough idea of what things I would like to move into, whether it's more merch, more products, and the price of that and how much I would need to even get that started. And then I can kind of work out whether I think that's going to happen in the next few months or the next few years, and then whether it's achievable, especially on your own, if you haven't got that funding. Then the next thing is your costs and bills, because if you're not making enough profit to cover all of your costs, then you're going to be making a loss, which obviously you don't want. Then the next thing is the outgoings of the business, because there is the costs for supplies, say, but then there is the outgoings in terms of like I say, your bills, and it's kind of like a general everything that needs to be covered. Then there is profit needed, because like I say, there are things that they still sell but they don't make a lot of profit per like their margin of profit. So because I did accounting, it might be like a confusing term, but there's the price that you buy things for, or like the cost to make them. So that, say there's like a wholesale price of an item, then there's how much you sell it for in order to make a profit, because you wouldn't sell it for the same amount. So say you were selling a pair of shoes, if you made them for £10, you're not going to sell them for £10 because then you don't make any profit. So you would need to increase that, you would need to add on your costs, and then you'll be able to make a profit. But if the profit margin isn't high enough, then it's not necessarily sustainable. You might be making loads of these things, and then it will just use a lot of time and not make you a lot of money, which is why I speak a lot about pricing of cakes, because I see so many people that do cakes for 20-30 quid, and with the cost of ingredients being so high, you'll be making so many cakes, and because the profit is so low, you have to make more of them. Whereas I can make one cake for the same price as someone is making 3. So if you think about the time used to make one cake or the time used to make 3, you're saving a lot of time and money. Then you want to work out your sales per year. So this is so that you can get an idea of your growth, and work out whether you've improved, whether you've expanded, whether you are developing as a business, basically. So I worked out for last year mine, and then I worked out for this year, and in the first 6 months I've already kind of like doubled from last year's 6 months. So I definitely know that I am expanding and I'm going in the right direction. So the next thing is products. In your plan, you want to have an idea of what you're selling, obviously, whether it's a service, a product, but you also want to be able to expand on that, because a business is going to go a bit stale if you don't have new ideas. The thing is, you start a business with an idea, but you need to have an ability to expand on that. So what I've got is new launches, because new launches and new drops, whether it's clothing, whether it's a service, like a new thing on your menu, you need to have new things to keep people interested, because otherwise they're just going to get bored. So that's the first thing. And then there's developing new ideas, because you can have plenty of ideas, but like I say, actually developing them is the most important thing, and putting it into practice. So you want to make sure that you've got plenty of ideas for expansion, so that you can keep your business like current and kind of like moving with the times. But then also you want to make sure that you can actually put those into practice, and they also kind of fit into your business model, because you don't want to be doing like crazy random things. So you want it to kind of be within a theme of your business. So the next thing is sources of income. So this is in regards to your avenues of income. So for me, I have YouTube, I have my cake business, I have my merch, my digital products. What else? There is something else, but I can't. My products, so silicone molds, I don't think I said that, but I have all these avenues to earn income. Then it means that if one was to fail, then I have another one. So I think it's really important to have backups of things, because then it allows you to have like a safety net of income, which is typically why some people keep a part-time job, because then while they're starting their business, they've got that backup of income. So you just need to work out whether you're willing to take the risk. Like I say, I quit my job, so I completely like took the risk, but it just depends on you and whether you want to do that. The next thing is relating back to your products, and that is capitalizing on the most money making. So in regards to keeping up with the times and all of that, you need to be making sure that you are capitalizing off of the most money making things, and not kind of getting stuck in the things that are not necessarily the most popular, because obviously you want to still make those, but there's certain things that like I like doing, things like say brownies, but they don't make a lot of profit. So you need to work out whether the time and money is worth the amount of profit that you get. So that is everything that we've got. So I'm just going to quickly run over the kind of like titles again, just so that you understand. But number one is the idea, then it's your sample product, how it's going to become a business, and then the next one is your team and workload. Then you've got target market, your goals, the market, so that is not your target market, that is the actual market that you're selling, so like how well you can sell your product. And then there's financials, and then lastly it's products. So I hope that was informative and I hope that was useful for people. A lot of people asked to see a business plan, so that is kind of like my rough guide. So I'm hoping that that will help you write your business plan out and work out your goals and your ideas and put them into practice and hopefully start a business. So I hope you guys enjoyed and I hope that was useful. I'm losing my voice and it is really annoying. This has happened once before, which you guys will know about, so I'm hoping that it doesn't affect my uploads in the next few days, fingers crossed. But yeah, it's literally just my voice, that's it, but it's really annoying. So we managed to make it through the podcast. That's why it's slightly short, because I don't think I can manage any longer. But I'm hoping that you found it useful, and if you have any questions regarding business plans and if you want any like more detail on things, then just comment down below on YouTube, and if you're listening on Spotify, then just message me on my Instagram. So as I said, I will see you in my next video and I hope you enjoyed. Bye!